You have been the Director General of CSIR for a long time. You have also been on the board of directors of many companies, reputable companies across the globe. And you have led their science or innovation foundations. So you certainly have a very broad spectrum of the field of science that is emerging. What I would like to ask you is that which are the 4 or 5 areas of scientific development which you think are going to be highly impactful over the next 25-30 years, which we can consider as the lifespan for this of working of this generation. Which are those 4 or 5 areas which are going to impact India and the world over this period, and what should they do to get themselves ready for it?
Now, your question about new technologies that will sort of come. There are existing ones and there are rapidly emerging ones. Now, among them, I will single out a few. I think the first is going to be biology, but more importantly, new biology. You know, after Watson and Crick found out the structure of DNA, the world changed, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
And therefore, we started talking about gene therapy and all these advances, etc. But over a period of time, what has happened is that there have been some breakthroughs in new biology, like synthetic biology.
Yes.
Like, for example, new tools that have come up. Like there is this tool called CRISPR-Cas9. So if you look at human genome, it took us more than a decade and $3 billion to crack the genome. $3 billion. Today we can do it for not just $300, $100.
Yes.
$3 billion to $100. So as a result of that, this tool is in everybody's sort of hand, so as to say. It is affordable. And then what has happened is that previously we read the genome. Now we can write the genome.
Yes.
So as to say, we can make correction. Now CRISPR is like a Caesar.
Yes.
It can cut, paste, adjust.
That's true.
So what it means is that it can repair genes, for example, and some of the diseases like cystic fibrosis don't have to be there because they are there because of some malfunctioning. You can start correcting it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you will find that the new challenges that we have, these techniques can be used. For example, take climate change. You will see the kind of variations that we are going to have in terms of high temperatures, very low temperatures, all sorts of adverse conditions. And the plants have to be grown, agriculture has to survive under these conditions.
Yes.
And therefore, CRISPR-Cas9, as a matter of fact, can help create plants which will be salt tolerant, drought tolerant,
That's true.
tolerant to all kind of stresses.
Yes.
And it's the same thing in medical science, for example. I would say, as far as the new biology is concerned, that close to 60% of the physical inputs can be created by new biology.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I don't have to tell you that because KPIT technology is based on digital technology. And we have seen advances in this, and we call them exponential technologies now.
Yes.
Because they grow exponentially in terms of the speed, in terms of reduction of cost, etc., etc.
Yes.
So whether it is artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud, edge computing,
Or quantum computing.
quantum computing, for example, you will have digital twins, for example, or facial recognition, IoT, for example, Internet of Things, and a brain-computer interface, etc. So there are something like 25 technologies which fall under that one category. Like I said, in biology, there are sort of several. Also, what will happen is that, as you can see, we talked about 2G, then we went to 3G, 4G, in terms of power of network. Now people are talking about 6G.
Yeah.
Now, Ravi, you can understand if you are talking about 1 terabyte per second, what difference we are talking about.
Yes.
All intermittencies go, this, that, and the other, etc.
Yes.
And that will have sort of tremendous repercussions.
So I think intelligence can lie somewhere up in the cloud,
Yes.
and you can draw it in every fraction of a second. So I
Beautifully
think
put.
yes.
Beautifully
Yes.
put.
Yes.
Absolutely. So that is the power.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have this Web 3.0, for example, Web 1.2 was decentralized, Web 2.0 become centralized and few companies benefited. Web 3.0,
Yes.
finally it is going to be the hands of the people, the creators. It will be internet of the people, controlled by
Extraordinary change in the lives of everybody around.
everybody else, basically, So it's going to be huge democracies. And then people talk about augmented humanity, where personalized, every person can be technologically augmented in terms of wearables, for example. You may be wearing a smartwatch or whatever, and other sort of. So these technologies, and you will have ingestibles, for example, which can sort of tell you what's happening, the path, and all that. So I would say the first is new biology, second is sort of digital technologies in variety of forms, and they're just growing, actually. And the third, as a generic term, I would say clean energy technologies. Because we know the dangers of climate change and what danger lies ahead if we don't sort of keep that rise to 1.5 degrees centigrade, etc. All those targets are known. And therefore, there will have to be a variety of technologies, which I would call it a decarbonization in some sense. Not only just less carbon, but carbonless. If we like to put that, will be the ultimate.
Even actually carbon negative, if you can do it, because the amount of damage that we have done to the environment over the last century and a half is just enormous. Yes.
And there, of course, there are lots of technologies coming in different, whether it is production of new energy, and we already know about solar photovoltaic or wind and others.
Yes.
But also new energy forms, like, for example, we talk about green hydrogen, because normally hydrogen is grey hydrogen, that we get by reforming and so on and so forth. But then blue hydrogen is one where you can actually store the carbon dioxide that gets generated simultaneously. But green hydrogen is the best because, see, for example, if you get solar electricity and that is used to decompose water in an electrolyzer, basically split water, then that is the best way of doing it. So I think there are technologies that are emerging to create that. And there is a lot of scope for improvements and achieving new targets. For example, in electrolyzers, can we increase the electrolyzer efficiency dramatically? But that will bring the cost down and so on and so forth. And then there are alternative ways we'll have to think, because, for example, when you say water splitting, 1 ton of green hydrogen will require 10 tons of water, for example. And if you are talking about millions of tons of water, where will that water come from? Because we require it for agriculture, we require it for human consumption, we require it for industry and so on. So can we look at that vast sea and say whether seawater electrolysis can directly give you water? That's a challenge. That is not made. The best thing will be the sun is shining, and if you have a photocatalysis, which actually decomposes, there is nothing like it. And that too at the room temperature. You don't have. Now, the challenge there is that the current efficiencies are only 1%. Can we take them to 10%, 15%? That requires new science again. And
The kind of thing that we had to do when we came about photovoltaics.
Yes.
Changing the efficiency of photovoltaic over the last 2-3 decades.
Just see, actually, I sit on the Queen Elizabeth Prize of Engineering, which is kind of a Nobel Prize in engineering. And this year, it was given to Martin Green, from New South Wales. And what did he do? We were stuck at around 14% efficiency. He took it to 28-29%. How did he do that? By creating a new breakthrough, which is called Perk cell technologies. All right. Now, in that, what you are doing is that when you hit a photon and create an excited electron, basically they used to recombine. In his technology, he made sure they don't recombine. So therefore, technology like that. So I think the point I'm trying to make, particularly to the young students, is I've just picked up 3. I can pick up more, but these are kind of technologies which are important for not only human I mean, the productivity or growth, but human survival, I would put it this
yes,
way. And in
yes.
each of these, there are challenges in physics, in chemistry, in biology, in mathematics, in computer science, all sorts of sciences. So it is going to be the science, it is going to be the STEM, which is going to create our new world.